Girl sees a millionaire collapse and get attacked by snakes, then she does this. Let me know what you thought of this story in the comments with a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me what city you're watching from. I'd love to know if you enjoyed my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The September sun burned mercilessly over Oakhaven as Lily ran through the dusty streets, her bare feet dodging the potholes that dotted the cracked pavement. At 4 years old, the girl already knew every corner of the neighborhood, where simple houses contrasted with the imposing mansion that stood at the end of Acacia Avenue. That was where Arthur Kensington lived, the man who appeared on television talking about his brick factory, always wearing impeccable suits and smiling for the cameras. Lily had spent the previous night under the awning of a closed bakery, wrapped in an old blanket she had found in the trash. Her stomach was rumbling with hunger when she decided to walk to the mansion, drawn by the smell of fresh bread coming from the kitchen. She didn't intend to ask for anything. She had learned that adults tended to ask too many questions when a child showed up alone. She just wanted to enjoy the aroma for a few minutes before moving on. The mansion's high gate allowed a view of part of the immense yard, with its well-kept gardens and the blue pool that shimmered under the sun. Lily pressed her face against the iron bars, observing a world that seemed to belong to another planet. It was then that she saw the tall man walking slowly through the garden, wearing only a white t-shirt and pajama pants. She immediately recognized Arthur Kensington, although he looked very different from on television, frailer, more tired. Arthur was walking unhurriedly among the rose bushes when he began to stagger. Lily frowned, finding his uncontrolled movement strange. The man brought a hand to his head, as if dizzy, and at that moment, something terrible happened. From the flower bed near the wall, several snakes began to emerge, slithering quickly toward him. They were boas and pythons of various sizes, animals that had escaped from the traveling reptile exhibit that had been set up in the town's central square since the previous week. The scream Lily let out echoed through the empty street when she saw Arthur collapse just as the snakes approached him. The man fell heavily to the ground, unconscious, while the reptiles began to coil around his motionless body. The girl didn't think twice. She climbed the high gate with a surprising agility for her age, tearing her worn dress in the process, and ran to the shed at the back of the house. Her small hands trembled as she grabbed an old broom leaning against the wall. Lily ran back to where Arthur lay, now with 3 large snakes coiled around his chest and arms. The courage that took hold of her at that moment was something she herself couldn't comprehend. She began to hit the snakes with the broom, yelling and making abrupt movements to scare them away. "Get off! Get away from him!" she shouted, her childish voice echoing through the silent yard. The snakes, startled by the noise and the blows from the broom, began to slowly move away. Lily continued to beat the ground around Arthur until she was sure all the animals had returned to the distant flower beds. Only then did she drop the broom and kneel beside the unconscious man. Sir, wake up," she whispered, gently touching his face with her small, dirty hands. Arthur began to stir slowly, his eyes opening in confusion under the strong sun. The first thing he saw was the worried face of an unknown little girl, with tangled brown hair and large eyes shining with anxiety. It took him a few seconds to understand where he was and what had happened. "The snakes," he murmured, trying to sit up. "I scared them away," Lily said, helping him to lean up. "You fainted and they were all around you. I got the broom and made them go away." Arthur looked around and indeed saw a few snakes moving in the distant flower beds. He realized the girl had saved his life, and a deep emotion filled his chest. For the past few months, since Eleanor and Sophie had left, he had felt completely alone in the world. And now, an unknown child had risked her own safety to save him. "What's your name?" he asked, still dizzy but trying to focus on her face. "Lily," she replied, helping him to his feet. "Are you okay?" You need to see a doctor." "I'm fine, Lily. You were very brave." Arthur noticed the girl's torn clothes, her bare, dirty feet, her evident thinness. "Where are your parents?" The question made Lily's face immediately shut down. She lowered her eyes, fiddling with the hem of her torn dress. "I don't have parents. I live on the street." The answer hit Arthur like a punch to the gut. This brave child, who had saved his life without hesitation, was living abandoned on the streets of Oakhaven. An impulsive decision driven by gratitude and the loneliness he carried formed in his mind at that instant. "Lily, would you like to live here with me? You can look after me when I get sick, and I'll look after you as if you were my own family." The girl's eyes widened in surprise. She looked at the immense mansion, then at the kind man before her, and finally nodded, still unable to believe this was real. "Really?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, really. Come on, let's go inside. You must be hungry." As they walked toward the house, Arthur felt that something had profoundly changed in his life at that moment. The loneliness that had been consuming him since his wife and daughter left seemed less heavy with this little girl by his side. Lily, for her part, could hardly believe she would finally have a roof over her head and someone who cared about her. But neither of them imagined that this would be just the first of many challenges they would face together, and that their lives were about to get complicated in ways that not even the courage of a 4-year-old girl could easily solve. The first few weeks in the mansion passed like a confusing dream for Lily. The house was so large that she would get lost in the hallways, discovering new rooms every day. The room Arthur prepared for her was on the second floor, with a huge bed covered in white sheets that smelled of lavender and a window overlooking the entire yard where she had saved his life. Clara, the 45-year-old housekeeper who had worked for the family for over a decade, received Lily with a mixture of surprise and maternal tenderness. A robust woman with warm brown skin and a kind smile, she had cared for Sophie since she was little and had felt a huge void in the house since the family had separated. The girl's arrival brought movement and purpose back into her routines. "Child, you need a bath right away and some new clothes," Clara said on the first day, leading Lily to the main bathroom. "And then we'll take care of that hair and see if we have something in the kitchen to fill that little tummy." During the bath, Clara noticed the marks on Lily's thin body, old scratches, small scars on her knees and elbows, clear signs of someone who had lived on the streets for too long. Her eyes filled with tears that she quickly wiped away before the girl could notice. Arthur spent the first few days observing Lily with fascination and concern. The girl ate slowly, as if afraid the food would disappear at any moment, and woke up several times during the night, walking to the window to make sure she wasn't dreaming. He noticed that she watched him constantly, especially when he started to look pale or leaned against the walls. It was during the third week that Lily witnessed her first full episode of Arthur's mysterious illness. She was playing in the garden when she heard a strange noise coming from the library. She ran inside the house and found Arthur on the floor, convulsing slightly, his eyes rolled back. Terror seized her. She thought he was passing away like so many people she had known on the streets. "Mr. Arthur! Mr. Arthur!" she cried, kneeling beside him and holding his cold hand. Clara came running at the sound of the screams, and with practiced movements, turned Arthur onto his side and placed a cushion under his head. "Calm down, Lily, it passes. He's going to be okay," she said, though her own voice trembled slightly. The episode lasted almost 15 minutes. When Arthur finally came to, he found Lily holding his hand tightly, tears streaming down her small face. The look of terror in her eyes broke his heart. "I thought you were going away," she whispered, "like everyone goes away." "I'm not going anywhere. Arthur promised, pulling her into a clumsy hug while still lying on the floor. "I just get sick sometimes, but I always get better." That night, Clara explained Arthur's condition to Lily in simple words a child could understand. "His brain gets a little confused sometimes and makes him faint. The doctors don't really know why it happens, but he takes medicine that helps." "Did his wife leave because of that?" Lily asked, showing a surprising perception for her age. Clara hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Eleanor got very scared, and young Sophie too. They were afraid of finding him unwell." "But it's not his fault he's sick," Lily protested indignantly. "It certainly isn't, my child. But sometimes fear makes people make bad decisions." From that day on, Lily developed her own system for taking care of Arthur. She created secret signals that only she understood. When he rubbed his temples repetitively, it meant a headache was starting. When he blinked slower than usual, it was a sign he needed to sit down. When his breathing became irregular, she would run to get his medicine and a glass of water. "How do you know I'm going to faint before I even know it?" Arthur asked one afternoon, impressed by the accuracy of her predictions. "You look different. Your eyes get kind of lost and you breathe funny," she explained seriously. "You just have to pay attention." The nights were the hardest times for Arthur. Alone, in the immense room he had shared with Eleanor for over 20 years, he wrestled with dark thoughts about his future. The brick factory was facing financial difficulties that he had hidden from his family for months. Suppliers were starting to tighten the screws, demanding overdue payments, and he knew he would soon no longer be able to keep up the facade of prosperity. Guilt consumed him when he thought of Eleanor and Sophie. His wife had discovered part of the truth about the debts shortly before leaving, but he had downplayed the situation, promising he would resolve everything quickly. Now, with Lily under his responsibility, the pressure multiplied. How could he properly care for a child if he could barely keep his own house running? It was during one of these sleepless nights that Arthur made a decision that would change everything. He went down to his office and called Dr. Alistair, the doctor who had been monitoring his case for years, scheduling appointments not only for himself, but also for Lily. The girl needed complete checkups, up-to-date vaccinations, and medical care she had certainly never received during her life on the streets. "Doctor, I need to be honest with you," Arthur said during the late-night call. "I've informally adopted a child. She saved my life, but I know nothing about her health." "Arthur, are you aware of the responsibility this entails, especially considering your condition?" Dr. Alistair questioned with evident concern. "I am, doctor, but I can't abandon her now. She needs me as much as I need her." Meanwhile, upstairs, Lily was also awake, looking out the window at the stars shining over Oakhaven. She thought about Clara's words about Eleanor and Sophie leaving out of fear. A fierce determination grew in her chest. She would never abandon Arthur because of his illness. He had given her a home, food, and safety. She would repay him by taking better care of him than anyone ever had before. The next morning, Lily woke up early and went down to the kitchen, where she found Clara preparing breakfast. "Clara, can I learn how to prepare Mr. Arthur's medicine?" The housekeeper stopped stirring the coffee and looked at the girl in surprise. "Why do you want to know that, my child?" "To take care of him when you're not around, and so he won't be afraid that I'll leave like his family did." At that moment, Clara understood that this small girl had a heart bigger than many adults she had known, and that maybe, just maybe, she was exactly what Arthur needed to find the strength to fight against all the challenges that were to come. "All right," she said, smiling through the tears that insisted on welling up. "We'll learn together, but first you need to grow a little taller to reach the medicine cabinet." Lily's crystal-clear laugh echoed through the kitchen, and for the first time in months the house felt alive again. But neither she nor Clara imagined that Arthur's problems were much bigger than just his mysterious illness, and that soon they would have to face threats that no amount of love and dedication could easily solve. 3 weeks after Lily's arrival, the first real storm hit unexpectedly. Arthur was in his office, trying to organize his finances, when he heard the sound of cars stopping in front of the house. Through the window, he saw 2 men in suits getting out of a black sedan, carrying briefcases and serious expressions. His stomach clenched. He knew exactly who they were and why they were there. Clara answered the UI, Duda, with the formal politeness she had learned over decades of service, but Lily immediately sensed the tension in the air. The men asked for Arthur in firm, impatient voices, and she hid behind the living room curtains to watch. Mr. Kensington, we're from Keystone Construction. We've come to collect the overdue payments for cement supplies from the last 6 months, said the taller of the two, opening a folder full of documents. Arthur came down the stairs slowly, trying to control the tremor in his hands. Gentlemen, I'm aware of the situation. I just ask for a few more weeks to regularize. It's already been several weeks, Mr. Kensington. The total debt now exceeds $300,000. Either you pay at least half by the end of the month, or we'll have to take legal action. Lily didn't fully understand what the conversation meant, but the sudden paleness on Arthur's face frightened her. She saw him lean discreetly on the banister and recognized the signs she had learned to identify. She ran silently to the office, grabbed the medicine bottle and a glass of water, and returned just in time. Mr. Arthur, you need your medicine, she whispered, appearing beside him with the items in her small hands. The men looked at the girl in surprise, and Arthur felt a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. Thank you, Lily, he murmured, taking the medication under the curious gazes of the creditors. Are you ill, sir? Asked the shorter man, his expression softening slightly. I have a neurological condition that causes fainting spells, Arthur explained, forcing himself to keep his voice steady, but it doesn't affect my ability to honor my commitments. After the creditors left, Arthur locked himself in the office for hours. Lily stayed outside the door, listening to the sounds of drawers being opened and closed, papers being shuffled, and occasionally heavy sighs that broke her childish heart. It was Clara who finally explained the situation to her, using careful words. Mr. Arthur is having some trouble with his work, my child. Sometimes adults have problems with money. Is he going to lose the house? Lily asked, her large eyes filling with tears. I don't know, my child, but he's trying to fix it. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She got up several times to check if Arthur was okay, always finding him awake in his office, surrounded by piles of paper and a calculator. The third time she appeared at the door, he invited her in. Can't you sleep either? He asked, pushing aside some documents to make space on the armchair next to his desk. I'm worried about you, she admitted, climbing onto the large chair. Are the bad men coming back? They're not bad men, Lily. They just want to get the money I owe them, Arthur explained patiently. I bought materials for my factory and promised to pay, but now I'm having difficulties. Can you sell something? The girl's innocent suggestion made Arthur smile for the first time in days. That's a good idea. In fact, I'm already thinking about it. In the following days, dramatic changes began to happen in the mansion. Arthur started selling furniture, paintings, and decorative objects that had belonged to the family for generations. Lily watched in silence as men came to take the grand piano from the living room, the crystal cabinet from the dining room, and several pieces of art that adorned the hallways. Why are you selling the pretty things? She asked one afternoon, watching 2 men carry an old carved wooden bookshelf. To get money to pay the debts, he replied, trying to sound casual. These are just things. The important thing is that we have a roof over our heads. Clara watched it all with a heavy heart. She had cared for that house and those objects for years, watching Sophie grow up playing around the piano, witnessing the elegant parties Eleanor used to host in the dining room. Now, piece by piece, the family's memories were being sold to strangers. It was during one of these sales that Lily made a discovery that would change everything. While Arthur was negotiating with a buyer in the living room, she went up to the library, one of the few rooms that remained untouched. Drawn to the old books on the high shelves, she began to flip through dusty volumes that no one had opened in years. In a section dedicated to home medicine and traditional recipes, she found a handwritten notebook with a worn leather cover. The yellowed pages contained recipes written in a delicate cursive script, accompanied by drawings of plants and detailed explanations of medicinal preparations. For persistent headaches, chamomile tea with orange leaves 3 times a day, she read slowly, recognizing some words Clara had taught her. For dizziness and fainting, a preparation of lemon balm and melissa taken warm before meals. Lily's eyes shone with excitement. In the following pages, she found specific recipes for ailments of the brain and seizures, written in the same careful hand. On the inside cover it was noted, "Recipes from the healer Grandma Annabel Kensington for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren." Lily ran down the stairs, the notebook clutched to her chest. She found Arthur saying goodbye to the buyer who had taken the living room coffee table. "Mr. Arthur! Mr. Arthur!" she shouted, waving the notebook. "I found medicine for you." "What did you find, my child?" he asked, crouching down to her level. "A book with medicine recipes, from a lady named Annabel Kensington. Is she your family?" Arthur's face transformed completely. Annabel had been his paternal grandmother, a woman respected in Oakhaven for her knowledge of folk remedies. She had passed away when he was still a teenager, but the stories of her miraculous cures were legendary in the region. "She was my grandmother," he said, taking the notebook with trembling hands. "Where did you find this?" "In the library, among the old books. It has a recipe for headaches and for fainting just like yours." That night, Arthur, Lily, and Clara gathered in the kitchen to examine the notebook in detail. Many of the recipes were for common problems, colds, muscle aches, digestive issues, but there was an entire section dedicated to what Grandma Annabel called nervous ailments. "My mother always said his mother knew cures that doctors didn't," Clara commented, leafing through the pages with reverence. "Grandma Annabel cured a lot of people here in Oakhaven." "Can we try making the remedies?" Lily asked eagerly. "Some of these herbs are easy to find," Clara said, studying a specific recipe. "Lemon balm, chamomile, melissa. I have all of those in the back garden." Arthur felt a mixture of hope and skepticism. He had tried various conventional medical treatments over the years with limited results, but Lily's discovery of his grandmother's notebook felt like a sign, especially after everything that had happened between them. "Let's try," he decided. "It can't hurt, and who knows?" And so began a new routine in the house. Every morning, Lily and Clara would go out to the back garden to harvest the necessary herbs. The girl learned to identify each plant, the correct way to pick them, and how to prepare the teas following the notebook's instructions exactly. But what none of them knew was that Arthur's financial problems were about to worsen drastically, and that soon they would have to face a revelation that would put everything into perspective, including the real reason why Eleanor had abandoned her husband, leaving behind not just the fear of his illness, but much darker secrets about the family's future. The homemade remedies had worked better than anyone expected. After 2 weeks of religiously drinking the teas prepared by Lily and Clara. According to Grandma Annabel's recipes, Arthur's fainting spells became less frequent and less intense. The improvement brought a renewed energy he hadn't felt in months, but it also intensified his determination to definitively solve his financial problems before they destroyed everything. It was on an October morning, while Lily was playing in the yard, and Clara was preparing lunch, that the bombshell dropped with devastating force. Arthur was in his office when he received a call that changed everything. "Arthur, I have to tell you something urgent," said the voice of Sebastian, his accountant of 15 years. "I received a call from a lawyer representing your suppliers. They found out about the loan you took out, using the factory as collateral." Arthur's blood ran cold. How did they find out? Someone leaked the information, and now they're demanding immediate full payment of all debts, including interest and penalties. We're talking about over $800,000. Arthur collapsed into his chair, feeling the office walls spin around him. The loan had been his last desperate attempt to save the factory months ago, but the money had quickly run out, covering previous debts. Now he not only owed impossible amounts to suppliers, but he had also put the family business at risk. "How much time do I have?" he asked, his voice barely audible. 15 days to pay it all off, or they execute the mortgage on the factory. And if that happens, you lose the house too, because it's tied to the company's assets." After hanging up, Arthur was paralyzed for almost an hour. His entire world was crumbling, and now Lily would be affected too. The girl who had saved his life would be thrown back onto the streets because of his financial incompetence. It was Clara who found Arthur still sitting in the office as the sun was setting. She knocked on the door and entered, finding him with his head in his hands, the papers scattered on the desk showing red numbers and overdue stamps. "Sir, you missed lunch and dinner. Lily is worried," she said softly. "Clara, I have to tell you something terrible," he murmured, raising his red eyes. "We're going to lose everything, the factory, the house, everything." The housekeeper sat heavily in the chair opposite the desk, listening in silence as Arthur recounted his conversation with Sebastian. When he finished, a heavy silence filled the office. "What will happen to Lily?" Clara asked, verbalizing the fear that haunted them both. "I don't know. Child Protective Services will have to find a family for her. I won't be able to take care of her living on the street." "Sir, can I tell you something? Something that might change everything?" Arthur looked up, surprised by the mysterious tone in Clara's voice. "What do you mean?" "Mrs. Eleanor didn't just leave because of your illness or the debts," she began, choosing her words carefully. "She discovered something that you don't know she knows." "Discovered what?" Clara took a deep breath before continuing. "The debts you have aren't just yours. Mrs. Eleanor took out huge loans in her and young Sophie's names before she left. She used the documents she had access to as your wife to borrow money from different banks, using the factory and even this house as collateral." The revelation hit Arthur like a lightning bolt. "That's impossible. Eleanor wouldn't do something like that." "She did, sir, and she took almost $500,000. I saw the papers she left in her bedroom drawer before she left. I thought you knew, so I didn't say anything." "Where are these papers?" "I kept them all in a box in the basement. I didn't know if I should show you or hide them, so I just stored them away until I found the courage to tell you." Half an hour later, Arthur was in the dusty basement of the house, opening a box that contained the truth about the collapse of his financial life. The documents were all there. Loan agreements, proof of bank transfers, letters from banks confirming transactions made by Eleanor using forged powers of attorney. "She planned it all," he murmured, flipping through page after page. "For months, while I was desperately trying to save the factory, she was siphoning money from every possible source. And she took young Sophie because she knew that without her here, you wouldn't easily find out that the girl's documents were also used," Clara added. At that moment, Lily appeared at the basement door, her small silhouette framed against the light from above. "Mr. Arthur, the food is getting cold, and Grandma Annabelle's tea is ready." Arthur looked at the girl who had brought light back into his life, and an iron determination took hold of his chest. Eleanor had systematically destroyed everything he had built, but she would not destroy the bond he had formed with Lily. "I'm coming up, my child," he said, putting the documents back in the box. "Clara, tomorrow morning we're going to see a lawyer. Eleanor may have ruined my financial life, but she won't get away with the consequences." The next morning, as they drove to the town centre to meet with a lawyer, Arthur explained to Lily that they might have to move out of the mansion soon. "Where are we going?" she asked, swinging her legs on the high car seat. "I don't know yet. Maybe to a smaller, simpler place." "I don't mind," Lily said with the naturalness only children possess. "Anywhere is better than the street. And you'll be with me, right?" "I will," Arthur promised, his heart aching with her innocence. The office of Mr. Marcus Sterling, a lawyer specializing in commercial law, was in a colonial building in Oak Haven's historic center. After analyzing all the documents for 2 hours, he gave a devastating summary of the situation. "Mr. Kensington, your wife has committed several crimes: forgery, fraud, and misuse of powers of attorney. This is more than enough for criminal and civil proceedings." "But will that help me get the money back?" Arthur asked. "It will help to nullify some of the debts that aren't legitimately yours. But the money she has already spent, it's very difficult to recover if her whereabouts are unknown." "How long does this process take?" "Months, and during that time, the creditors will keep pressing. I recommend you negotiate a partial settlement while we move forward with the actions against your wife." When they left the office, Arthur felt both relieved to discover that part of his problems were not his fault, and terrified to realize that the solution would be a long and uncertain process. He had 15 days to find $800,000, or he would lose everything. It was while walking through the streets of Oak Haven, watching the preparations for the annual summer festival that would begin in a few weeks, that an idea began to form in his mind. The town filled with tourists during the festival, and his decorative bricks had always been sought after for themed constructions and ornamentation. "Lily, what do you think about us working together to save our home?" he asked, stopping in front of the square where the snakes had escaped months ago. "How?" she asked, interested. "We're going to make the most beautiful bricks this town has ever seen and sell them all during the summer festival." Lily's face lit up with a radiant smile. Finally, there was something concrete she could do to help the man who had changed her life. But neither of them imagined that Eleanor was closer than they thought, and that her return would bring even more shocking revelations about the true motives behind her disappearance. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you so much.